We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender.
Sir Winston Churchill was a British politician famous for his leadership of the United Kingdom during World War II. He was also a Nobel Peace Prize nominee and winner of the 1953 Nobel Prize for Literature and the first person to be made an honorary citizen of the United States.
We are in a very different position from that we were in 10 weeks ago. We are far stronger than we were 10 weeks ago. We are far better prepared to endure the worst malice of Hitler and his Huns than we were at the beginning of September.
Churchill was born in 1874 in Benham Palace, Oxfordshire, England. His father was a prominent conservative politician from the aristocratic family of the Duke of Marlborough. Churchill lived in Dublin until he was 6 and attended several schools in England where he failed academically. He then enrolled in the army and actively sought out military action and began to take an interest in war correspondence. It was in 1895 Churchill traveled to Cuba to observe the Spanish army fighting the Cubans. It was then he sought out service in India and Sudan, where he was named a conservative candidate for the Oldham constituency in England. He was then unsuccessful in his political campaign, so he obtained a commission to act as war correspondent in the Second Boer War in South Africa.
Our Navy is stronger. Our anti-U-boat forces are 3 times as numerous. Our Air Force is much stronger. Our Army is growing in numbers and improving in training every day.
He was then captured and imprisoned in a prisoner of war camp in Pretoria, South Africa, but escaped and rejoined his troops and continued on fighting. He then returned to England and published his experiences and once again stood for the Oldham constituency in the general election of 1901. He retired from the army and was made First Lord of the Admiralty in charge of the Royal Navy, where he upgraded and modernized the British fleet, but resigned in 1915 after the failure of the Battle of Gallipoli. Churchill then rejoined the British Army in order to salvage his reputation and spent time on the Western Front in World War I. He rejoined the government and was made Secretary of State for the War and Air and Chancellor of the Exchequer in 1924.
Die große Zeit ist jetzt angebrochen. Deutschland ist nun erwacht. Die Macht haben wir nun in Deutschland gewonnen. Nun gilt es, das deutsche Volk zu gewinnen.
The 1930s were known as Churchill's wilderness years, where he was opposed to self-rule of India, led by Mohandas Gandhi, and made continual unheeded warnings in Parliament about the rise of Nazi Germany and the need for British rearmament. He was made First Lord of the Admiralty when war broke out in 1939, and then when Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain resigned in 1940, Churchill took his place. Churchill refused to surrender to Nazi Germany, and rousing speeches and tireless work throughout the war hardened public opinion towards the war effort. He built a strong relationship with the American President Theodore Roosevelt and maintained a difficult alliance with the Soviet Union, Stalin, with the Soviets referring to him as the British Bulldog. Many in Britain saw Churchill as a great wartime leader, but not as a man to lead the country in peace, and he was defeated in the 1945 election. Despite being in his 70s, Churchill became the leader of the opposition and began to speak openly about the growing threat of the USSR. He was re-elected as Prime Minister in 1951 and resigned in 1955, but remained a member of Parliament until shortly before his death in 1965 at the age of 90. A state funeral was ordered by the Queen, and thousands stood in silence out of the respect for one of the greatest wartime leaders the British and the world have ever had.
Feel the breeze, look at the sky. Sun's hitting my cold skin. Take a breath, look around. See